Some of you may remember working somewhere like this. Once upon a time, there would have been 1,700 people in this London office. Today, there are perhaps a tenth of that. Linklaters is a city law firm, better known for long hours in the office than flexible working out of it. But when it comes to where its staff are working, it's leaving the choice in their hands.
It has to be a personal decision. Safety is paramount, and it's not for us to say how an individual should feel about themselves and their own circumstances. And so what we can do is make the environment that we create here at Linklaters in the office as safe as we possibly can be. We can explain to our people the benefits of coming into the office, but it has to be their choice, and they need to make that choice in the way in which is good for them and their family.
The government has been encouraging people to get back to the office, but unlike with schools where almost everyone agrees on the desired outcome, offices are proving more difficult. Remote working has largely been a success, and companies and employees are enjoying a new freedom and flexibility. They're in no rush to make changes, certainly not while COVID risks remain. And that is prompting serious concerns about the health of our city centres.
We have ecosystems, particularly in our city centres, where you've got dry cleaners, sandwich bars, a whole ecosystem of business. And our city centres are ghost towns at the moment. And what we need to strike is a balance between home working, the best of flexibility, with the best of office workings. Unless we start that conversation about the value of the office, the importance it plays in our productivity and our working life, in the ecosystem of our city centres, we could sleepwalk into our offices closing. There is a tipping point, I think, here, where they cease to become viable. Back to that point of people going back in, they're too empty, they're soulless, they don't work anymore.
UK workers are proving more reluctant to return to offices than elsewhere in Europe. Last month, only a third had returned to their normal workplace, compared to over 70% in Germany, Spain and Italy, and over 80% in France. Why? Well as locking down later, in some ways the UK locked down harder. More office workers worked from home during lockdown here than elsewhere. Getting back to work may be harder here. UK workers are more likely to have to commute and tend to work in denser, more cramped environments. No wonder, perhaps, that while across Europe many office workers want to be at home more, this is particularly true in the UK. Surveys do suggest that UK workers are more worried about COVID risks and especially wary of public transport. But put aside the fear factor for a minute. No matter how much the government boosts confidence or explains risks or relaxes restrictions, COVID has supercharged a shift that was happening already. Even at one of the city's traditional law firms, the move to a different way of working was well underway.
We would expect our colleagues over the long term to look to come into the office between 50 and 80% of the time. I don't think you can put this particular genie back in the bottle. I think that it is here to stay, and I think that what I'm very pleased about is that at Linklaters we've embraced it and actually applied it. And it's not been a knee-jerk response. It's been something that we've been looking at for the last 5 years. We see it very much as having accelerated the journey that we were on.
When companies are making these changes on a permanent global basis, would government attention be better directed to helping cities manage the transition?
I think there will be real adjustments in terms of how city centres work. But we don't want to give our city centres heart attacks, which is what's happening now. It's been so abrupt. And, we're looking at footfall in city centres 50% down on July last year. This is a heart attack. If we're going to have that kind of adjustment, let's make it in a way that is thoughtful, that does recognise the real value, particularly for young people. Not everybody can work comfortably from home, and there is a danger in assuming that everyone can.
This is a dual challenge for the government. How can it safely soothe COVID nerves and encourage more people back to the office in the short run, while accepting that it may not be possible or desirable to go back to the old normal, and that in itself will create new problems.
Helen Thomas there. Now to work out the work conundrum. We're joined by Professor Susan Mickey, Director of the Centre of Behaviour Change at UCL, John Caldwell, founder of the mobile retailer Phones for You and a philanthropist, and Tony Wilson, who's director of the Institute for Employment Studies. Tony Wilson, can we start with you first? The schools will be going back in large numbers in the coming days. Is that a game changer in terms of this equation of who feels ready to go back to the office?
Oh, I think it certainly could be, yes. I mean, a really important factor in why many people have had to work from home or chosen to work from home has been because they've needed to be caring for their children while the schools were off. And actually, that's continued into the summer holidays with many of the children's clubs and the holiday provision not being available. And we know that, particularly for the case of in case of women, around half of women who were furloughed had initiated that furlough, had requested that furlough, much more likely than for men to do that. So as long as schools are able to come back, I think people will find it easier to go back to work and easier to potentially to travel into work, into offices as well.
If it's easier, I suppose there's a question about how desirable is it? The government seems to think it is desirable. Susan Mickey, do you think it's desirable? Should the government be encouraging people back to work at this point?
The situation we have at the moment is that cases are rising week on week. Also, even by the government's own data, we don't have a functioning test, trace and isolate system, which is necessary for really containing the increases that we're seeing. So objectively, it's a risky situation. And I think the British population have said quite rightly that there's a priority that children should get back to school. So that means we really have to keep transmission as low as possible. Secondly, I think there's quite a concern that the preparation for ensuring safe workplaces hasn't been done in consultation with staff representatives, trade unions and others. And this is a point that Independent Sage is making in the report it publishes tomorrow that's been backed by the TUC. And thirdly, what people have found, both employers and employees, that for many people working at home has meant more productivity and has avoided the long commute, which is bad for people's physical and mental health, and also very bad for the planet because of carbon emissions. So I think we really have to think about building back better, that we can think about a new way of being, and I think creatively. For example, employers clubbing together and having local...
Let me jump in there, if I may. I'm sorry to interrupt, because I did want to pick up on something you've just said, which is about improving productivity. John Codwell, do you think people working from home can be more productive?
Well, yes, I think that they can be more productive. Is the average person going to be more productive? No, I think absolutely not. I think there's too many distractions in most people's home places, but also people do go to work, let's not forget, for the camaraderie and for the socialism of it, and for the sparking off each other and creating a dynamic environment which people prosper in and become more productive. So I'm not saying that people cannot be more productive, but I think on average, people will be less productive.
Right. Well, it's fascinating that you make that point, because the Daily Telegraph have got a lead story in their paper tomorrow. I'm sorry that you can't see it zooming in as you are, but the viewers can see the headline, "Go back to work or risk losing your job." They talk about the Prime Minister launching a campaign next week to extol the virtues of returning to the workplace, making the emotional case for mixing with colleagues and highlighting the benefits to their mental health, much as you just have, John. Can I just pick up on that then with Tony? I mean, do you think this is the right thing for the government to be doing now?
I mean, I saw these headlines as well, but just before I came on. I think we do need to be really careful with our language at the moment. I mean, this is a point where millions of people are really worried about their jobs and about their job security. We're in the middle of a really deep recession, and we're also still in a public health crisis where people are worried about their own health and the health of people that they love. So I think we need to be careful about potentially fear-mongering or making people feel threatened and feel that they're at greater risk of losing their jobs if they don't go back to work. Not least because I think that's actually very unlikely. I mean, I think most employers are doing, as we heard in the piece, as Linklaters are doing, is saying we want to give people the choice of going back to work. So I do think we have to be careful about our language. And I really hope ministers themselves won't be threatening that people may lose their jobs if they don't return to work.
Susan Mickey, let's come back to you on this productivity point that you made earlier. I mean, what's your evidence for that? What makes you think that people are working more productively at home?
Well, surveys are suggesting that people have been working productively at home, but obviously it depends on people's, as has been said, people's home situations. And also, as has been said, it's very important that people do have that camaraderie, collegiality, and have contact with other people. But the point that I was making is that it doesn't necessarily have to go back to people travelling hours every day to get into city centres. There's ways in which employment could be organised very differently, so people could spend some time at home and some time going into local hubs where they could work along other people in their own areas, and have the local cohesion, which I think would be a win-win. People wouldn't have to have the long travel. Employers wouldn't need to fund very expensive, huge, big offices in the middle of cities, and people could begin working and getting to know people in their own localities, which I think could end up with better local cohesion. And as I said before, we actually still have a climate emergency, and so this can really reduce in terms of the unnecessary transport and carbon emissions.
Well, let's pick up on your office cost point with John Codwell. I mean, listen, you're a businessman. Presumably you can see that for a lot of businesses, there's a common interest here, isn't there, in reducing the amount of office space needed, going to part-time arrangements, coming in 2 days a week, or perhaps, to take Susan's example, having locally based team working. Is there any point in the government really fighting against this, if this is just something that businesses and their employees mutually find to be a good solution?
I don't think this is a government issue at all. The government is there to advise on whether they feel it now appropriate and safe for people to travel to work. It's then up to each individual employer to decide on each individual employee as to whether their services are better and more efficiently used within the office environment or within the home environment. And I would actively encourage home working if that's the most appropriate solution. But I think in the majority of cases, it's probably not, and it would be good to get the offices back to a dynamic, really lively environment where creativity fires off everybody. You know, I've built all my businesses in the past in that sort of environment, and people spark off each other. When you're working in a home environment, you lose a lot of that spark. But it does depend on the particular job that you're doing. So there's no firm answer to this, except that government are not responsible. The people that are responsible are the employers to make sensible decisions with each individual employee. But you know, there's a much, much bigger issue here. We are debating this particular issue of home working versus office working, but the much bigger issue is that we are facing the biggest depression and recession of our lifetimes, and the government need to do something pretty spectacular to avoid the absolute devastation that will occur if they don't do something. And I've already consistently advised the government what needs to be done, and I've called it the Codwell Pandemic Recovery, which is investing huge sums of money into the economy, not giving it to people, investing it in creating jobs, creating inward investment, apprenticeship schemes, and all the infrastructural growth that we need to keep Britain at the forefront of industrial success.
John, before I pass this to Tony Wilton, are you working in an office at the moment?
Well, I'm actually in Sardinia on holiday at the moment, so I am working in my office, yes, because I've got an office on the boat. But I do work when I'm back at home. I do work in an office every single day, yes.
All right. Tony, I just wanted to pick up with you. I mean, there seems to be, interestingly, a bit of a consensus here between John and Susan about the benefits of hub working and combination of home working and going in to offices. But of course, even a quite small change in the number of people coming in, if they're coming in 3 days instead of 5 or whatever, it does have potentially catastrophic effects for city centre workers, doesn't it? The so-called Pret effect. I mean, what's the answer there? I mean, the government can take measures like Eat Out to help out. They've created an expectation that they can give targeted help in certain sectors. Is this a sector of the economy where they might have to do so?
Well, I think it's yes, I think it is, but I think that help should be focused on the workers, on the individuals, and on the city centres rather than necessarily the sectors. I mean, I think actually the points that Susan and John are making are right. I mean, this is a longer term change now that we're seeing. This has been catalysed, if you like, by the pandemic, but this is going to be a permanent shift where we will continue to work in offices, I think, but we'll spend more time working away from them, and that will have consequences in city centres. So, those jobs will continue to be protected through the job retention scheme until the end of October. There may be a case for some kind of time limited extension for some jobs, some sectors, to protect those jobs for a bit longer. But ultimately, we are going to have to find ways to help the people who work in those industries who could be at risk of losing their jobs to find better jobs, and the economy needs to be in a position to create better jobs with better prospects, better pay, more security, and so on. And I think to do that, we do need investment, as John says. I think we also need to reduce the costs for employers for creating jobs, for example, by reducing the cost of national insurance or introducing some sort of wage or hiring incentives. And we need to make sure we're really targeting help to find work, to retrain, to prepare for work at those people at risk of losing their jobs. So there's a lot we're going to need to do to address this, I think.
I've got to jump in, sorry, because we've not got much time left. If I can just ask Susan Mickey, I mean, look, there seems to be a moment of truth coming up here with the ending of the furlough scheme. How difficult a period is that going to be in terms of the journey towards the new future you've been talking about tonight?
Well, I do want to make the point that while the cases of transmission are rising, and we've had 500 additional cases in the last week, nobody can be relaxed about going back to work and going onto public transport. And also, it has the risk of further lockdowns, which is going to be really bad for the economy.
Absolutely.
So it's got to be a win-win by driving down transmission, and the government needs a strategy to do that, which requires really going for zero COVID and getting a good test, trace and isolate system based in, again, local public health, which still hasn't been done and which is going to be absolutely necessary to get us out of the situation we're in. That's what the economy needs. That's what people need. And there's no point forcing people back to work when they know that they're at risk and they're going to be
Susan Mickey, I've got to jump in there. I'm sorry, we're out of time. Susan, Tony Wilson, John Caldwell, thank you all so much for joining us tonight.